What up, what up? Y'all ready for tonight? Really quick, we just seen the video right now for Riot Night. I said we just seen the video for Riot Night. Riot Night is June 2nd. Everyone say June 2nd. That's going to be a night that you're not going to want to miss. That's going to be a night that you're going to want to invite everybody. Say everybody. Please make sure that you invite everybody. I'm telling you. If you think what God is doing right now is going to be crazy. I mean, just imagine a room of 700, 800 kids. Just not kids, young adults. You guys are in high school. I'm sorry. Imagine a room full of youth, literally just getting ready, and young adults just believing just to have an encounter with God. I mean, imagine what God can do. I mean, I've seen it. I've gone to thousands of conferences. I've gone to a lot of stuff. When everyone is in one area believing, God just moves radically, and that's what we're going to experience. So what we have here is a touch card. These cards are going to be the very cards that you can use to invite. So make sure that after service, you guys visit the connection table, or they might have some people set up ready to pass them out for you. But these cool cards you can take with you, pass them out at school, pass them to your family, pass them out at the mall. Do everything that you possibly can. Just don't get in trouble, but do everything you possibly can to pass these out. Because June 2nd is going to be a night that you're not going to want to miss. Other than that, though, tonight, I had the privilege of being able to share the word with you. Pastor Billy and Randy are out of town right now, and so they send all their love. They've been praying all week, believing all week. I've been meeting with them all week, just prepping for tonight, and it's evident of what God is trying to do in our lives. And so, if you're ready, can you just stand with me as we get ready to read the word? Word. Didn't sound like it. I said word. Word. Tonight we're going to continue reading out of Proverbs. Over the past 2 weeks, Pastor Billy has gone through Proverbs 1:1, Proverbs 1:2. If you were here last week, I'm telling you, it was phenomenal. And tonight we're just going to continue in that overflow. And so we'll start at verse 1. And it says, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand the words of insight. And verse 3, where we are going to focus at tonight, says to receive instruction and wise dealing and righteousness and justice and equity. Tonight, the title of the message is going to be the same as the past couple weeks, and that is Dear Young Person. So let's pray. Father, we just thank you right now. We ask that you open up our hearts and you open up our minds ready to receive the word that you have for us. So we thank you, and we just seal this in your name. And everybody says, amen. You may be seated. I remember there was a time when I was about 11 years old, and me and my brother were originally from the East Coast. This is why we're a little bit different. We're from Jersey. We grew up, born and raised in Jersey, Violent, New Jersey. Then we moved to Florida, and then from Florida, we moved out here to Cali, and now we're in Cali, living in the desert, in the heat. It's phenomenal. But there's this time when I lived in Florida, and I was 11 years old, and me and my brother were living in this apartment with my mom. And in Florida, there's a lot of alligators. There's a lot of turtles. There's a lot of just random snakes, and it's just constantly wet and sticky. We got beautiful beaches, but it's kind of dangerous. And we had these lakes everywhere. And I remember when I was 11 years old, even in our apartments, we had these ponds, and I'll call them a lake when I was younger. And they were really ponds, and true story, this isn't even a part of it, but my brother actually got chased by an alligator. And he was zigzagging and had to run up a flight of stairs because the alligator just came out of the water. And this is what we were living in. And I remember being 11 years old, and my mom, after school, she would always tell us, make sure that you stay in home, and then you can go outside when I get home. How many parents do that? You can't go, don't leave nowhere until I get home. And so my mom, she would call us and say, hey, you can't go anywhere. Make sure that you stay inside, complete your homework, And then when I get home, you can go outside and hang with your friends. And so me and my brother, we would always do the opposite. And so in the moment we come home from school, we would put away our homework and we would open up the door and we would go outside and we'd go hang with our friends. And I remember this one time, I was 11 years old, I remember in the back of our apartments was the pool. And the pool had this bridge over a pond that connected the jacuzzi to the pool. So it's like the pool's over here, then there's this bridge, and then it's jacuzzi in this random island. And we went out there and we started fishing. And so I'm on the bridge, and I'm fishing, and in Florida, fishing is a normal thing. Out here, you guys are like, fishing? What the? That's just boring. In Florida, that's normal. And so we're out there and we're fishing, and I remember I caught this fish, and I take it. And my hands were smaller then, and the fish had was sharp little spine, and I couldn't be able to get the fish off. And so I'm looking around at my brother and my other friend, and they're like, dude, let's just toss it in the jacuzzi. And I'm like, okay. So I got the pole, and I tossed the fish in the jacuzzi, and I couldn't get it off. So they're like, let's just toss it. And at the time, I had no idea that the fish wasn't supposed to be in chlorine. Like, I was just like, oh, it's going back in water. And so I toss it into jacuzzi, and the fish starts going crazy, and it's spinning in circles. Like, it's just swimming in circles. And it starts swimming in circles, and I'm like holding on to the pole because I'm like, okay, I got to pull it out. But then the fish breaks off of the pole because he dies, and the fish starts just floating in the water. And the water's like, the fish swam so fast that the water actually picked up, and it's like moving in a circle. I was like, what is happening? And so my brother looks at me, and he says, Gio, we got to go. And I'm like, but the fish, like, I got to grab the fish. And my other friend starts taking off running, and my brother starts taking off running, and I'm stuck there. And I'm kind of the one who thinks about things, and my brother does it too. I grab this bucket, and I try to get into jacuzzi, but the fish is swimming in circles, so I'm like half in my school clothes, and I'm in the water, and I'm trying to grab the fish, but this fish is swimming in circles around me, and I wasn't able to get it. And then next you know, I feel someone grab my shirt, and I'm like, uh-oh. And I turn around, and the guy's like, what are you doing? And he pulls me out. And I'm like, oh, man. And it was one of the guys that worked there. He's like, don't you know we're going to have to shut down this whole entire thing now? Starts ripping me a new one. And he walks me all the way back to my apartment. My brother's inside. He opens up the door. He's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, he's just acting like he wasn't even a part of it. And I remember getting inside, my mom finding out, and she was ripping me a new one, and I got grounded. It was terrible. And I remember this moment, my brother telling me, hey, we got to go. Like, get up and go. Just leave it behind. You screwed up. Just go. And I didn't for some reason. I was trying to be the hero in this, and I ended up getting in trouble for it all. And trying to be the hero in it, I had this understanding in my heart, though, that I had to do the right thing because I just did the wrong thing. And what I really want to focus on tonight is this very aspect, because I think a lot of us are always faced with great opportunities, but in the midst of it, there's always this trial that comes. And it's like, okay, here I've done something, whether it's good or bad, here I'm doing something. But then on the opposite end, there's another side of it that's saying, okay, there's another opportunity presenting itself. So if you're doing something good, bad comes. If you're doing something bad, good comes. And I was in the midst of this moment, and I was looking at my brother who's just taking off. And I was chunkier back then, and so I wasn't as fast. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to grab this fish. I'm going to do the best thing. What I started to realize is that this was my very nature of just who I was. My brother would take off, and I would always stay. We would walk in neighborhoods, and stray dogs would come, and he won't even tell me nothing. He would just start running, and I'm stuck with all the dogs. I was just stuck in everything, and I started to understand, but this was who I was. And when I begin to look at it, and when I begin to look at the young generation, I begin to look at our lives, oftentimes a lot of us don't know who we are. And when we don't know who we are, when opportunities begin to come, it becomes very challenging. because we don't know what's going to hurt us. We don't understand what's going to bring us down. We don't recognize what's eventually going to hurt us. And tonight, I really want to focus on this, because I think when we can start understanding who we're reflecting every single day, then we'll begin to understand the battles that we face. Every single day we face this battle, whether you're the one that faces insecurity, or you're the one that faces doubt, or if you're the one that faces fear. If you're the one that had a bad situation happen to you young, you grew up without a parent. That was me. I grew up without a father, and all these bad opportunities that would come. I had no idea who I was. I was trying to look at it. I was trying to look at the world and say, okay, this is who I was. If I dressed like this, when baggy jeans were in and J's were all in and all this clothes was all in, that was us. And I used to define myself by what I wore, and I used to define myself by who I hung out with, and I used to define myself by what I did. But I failed to recognize that when Jesus died on the cross for us, he already created me in a way that he had planned for me. And that was to live in wholeness, and that was to live in love, and that was to live in joy, and that was to live in understanding, and that was to live in everything that God had created for me. He didn't just die just to die, but he did it so that we can reflect and live with him. And every single day when we walk opposite from that, we're starting to walk in who we think we are. But when we start walking in who we think we are, we start fighting battles that we never understood. And tonight I want to talk about what it's like to recognize your battle, because if you can understand who you are, then you'll understand eventually what's going to hurt you. And when you don't understand what's going to hurt you, then this is why every single time you're faced with a situation, it's so overwhelming and it's so hurtful and it's so crazy, because it's like, well, why is it that the fact that this is hurting me? Why did so-and-so say something about me and it's really messing with me? Why am I staying up all night thinking about it? Why am I in the midst of all these things? And God is literally saying, don't you know that I died for you so that you can live free from that? He came here. He left a perfect place to walk in the most corrupt and crazy place that you and I walked so that we can live free every day. But why don't we live free? Because we fail to realize that we were created to reflect him. And in our inability of being able to reflect him, all the battles that we were meant to conquer is now the battles that we become slaves to. Recognize the battle. The first thing I want you to understand is that ignorance always follows wisdom. Whenever there's an opportunity for you to learn something, ignorance is always going to try to come into the way. This is why when you sit under your mom and you sit under your dad and they're trying to teach you, hey, don't do this, hey, don't do that. They're trying to give you some wisdom because they walk through it. But the ignorance that we like to carry oftentimes is, Mom, you don't understand. Mom, you don't get it. Mom, you're not in my position. You don't understand. And they're looking at you saying, listen, I walked that route. The reason why they're able to give you advice is because they were able to walk that route. The same way with Jesus. The reason why he begins to say, hey, when I speak to you, listen and try to understand is because he's walked the route of facing temptation. He's walked the route of facing self-righteousness. He's walked the route of doing things that he can do on his own, but he even had to learn how to sit under wisdom. Jesus, when he was 12 years old, he got lost in the temple. And what did they do? They found him sitting with rabbis. He was literally 12 years old. This is Jesus, who has every understanding. Jesus, he came from heaven. He knows the Bible. He knows what God says. He knows what his Father's saying. But Jesus even got faced with the opportunity to sit under wisdom. And Jesus didn't sit under the teachers and say, listen, I already know that. Listen, my Father already told me that. Listen, you just don't understand, Rabbi. You never walked this walk. And Jesus sat there and said, okay, the Bible begins to teach us that him and the rabbis will go back and forth, meaning that they would be in discussion, because Jesus would sit there and take the wisdom that he was given, not sit there in ignorance and say, you know what, I don't need to learn anything. And when we sit in the ignorance of our lives saying, you know what, I can't take wisdom, then this is when we start failing in our battles. And it seems like more and more today, young people don't know how to fight this fight, and no one's looking to complete the race, but everyone's sitting there saying, you know what, I can do this on my own. Arrogance would teach you that if you try to do it on your own, you're going to stay alone. God didn't come down all the way from earth just to say, hey, you have to walk this life alone. He's saying, hey, I'm here to walk it with you. But in order to walk it with you, you must be willing to listen. Whenever there's an opportunity to learn, don't get so quick to walk in that ignorance. But be slow to understand that what God is allowing people to speak into your life is important. I grew up fatherless, and I could have sat under everyone who's tried to be a father figure for me and say, you know what, you're just like my father, so I'm never going to do it. But I never looked at it like that. I said, okay, you want to play a role in my life for this season? Then I'm going to take what you have. I'm going to take what's good, and I'm going to listen to the bad, but I'm going to take what's good because I'm sitting under some wisdom right now. And anything that you can teach me, I'm going to take to become a better man. This is how we should start looking at it. The second thing is corruption will always try to take the place of justice. Whenever there's an opportunity for something to be great, corruption's always going to try to come in. When Jesus began to walk through the wilderness, Jesus was walking in justice. He knew what God had called for his life. But corruption, the enemy, would try to come in and try to tell him, hey, if you can do everything on your own, hey, aren't you the one who came from heaven? Can't you turn this into this? Can't you just change all of this? And Jesus, all Jesus would do was speak back the promises of God, because he wasn't looking to live a life in corruption. He was looking to live a life in him. There's a difference of having God with you and still living for yourself and just saying, God, I'm going to put you on the back burner, and I'm going to talk to you when I need you. And this is why when the battle comes, it seems like that battle is so much bigger. If you were to carry Jesus within you, you would understand that anything that comes before you and anything that comes after you has to kneel to God, because God is the biggest thing of all. Corruption will always try to take the place of justice. There would always be an opportunity for something bad to take place in good. Understand that. And we as a generation have to recognize that. Knowing who you are, will be able to look at the battle and say, hey, I recognize that that's eventually going to hurt me. Hey, if my mind thinks a lot, which I'm a complex thinker, I like thinking deep into things. I know that if something were to happen in my life, I'm going to sit there in my thoughts. And so every single time I start sitting in my thoughts, I have to start telling myself, I cast those thoughts down, because I'm recognizing what's going to hurt me, not actually just leave me in a place of brokenness and frustration. Being able to understand who you are is first recognizing the battles that you face. If you know that words hurt you, then every single morning, speak the promises of God over your life. If you know that insecurity is something that you deal with, look in the mirror and remind yourself how beautiful and how good you look. Recognize that battle. The third thing is misjudgment will always try to replace judgment. You would always have an ability to discern. Who's ever got that gut feeling? Like when something's bad is about to go down, you get that gut feeling. You're like, I got to go. I got to dip. Like, it's just time for me to head out. That's called discernment. And discernment is a gift from God. And that discernment is nudging in you, saying, hey, you're not meant to be in this situation. Hey, that thought that you're thinking that's not you. Hey, that what you're feeling you can get out of. Hey, that battle isn't as big as you think. Hey, that mountain isn't as tall as it is. Hey, that discernment is teaching you to understand what is actually happening. But what the enemy will always try to do is he would always try to dress it up as something that is not right. And he would always try to come in and give you something different. Lucifer, he's a fallen angel. And he's known to be one of the most beautiful things ever, which means that he can dress himself up as beautiful, still carrying rotten fruits. But he looks good on the outside, but everything in is just all bad. And this is why having a judgment, having an understanding of what you're actually messing with is very important. Hear me. There's been many things in my life that came to me as beautiful. There's been many things in my life that has came to me that has just seemed as something that God has given me. Whether it be a relationship, whether it be a gift, whether it be an opportunity, whether it be something. There was always something in my life that looked good, but every single time I got close enough to it, I got this weird feeling inside of me saying the fruits don't match what my Father has actually given me. And this is where it starts to become tricky, because we like to just sit there and go, well, it looks good, Gio. He's an awesome guy. He's great. I mean, just look. He's in church. It's all good. He says he comes to church, but it's great. Don't worry, Gio. He's not going to hurt me. He'll be fine. 3 weeks later, you're missing from church, and you're actually in your feelings. Because it looked good on the outside, but the fruits of it weren't actually bearable for you. And this is where it starts to become crazy, because oftentimes this is what it's like. He dresses himself up as so great. Oh, it's so great. Like you just look awesome, and the opportunity is there, but what's actually on the other side of that door is actually meant to hurt you. And it was just a trap just to lure you in. And when you're able to recognize that battle, because God has given you a gift of discernment, then you're able to look at that door and say, I'm not walking to it. You don't know how many times I've said no. I said no to so many things. Things that I look back and I go, how did I even say no to that? Like, that just looks so great. But I look at my life now and I said, I'm thankful for following the feeling that God has given me. Because I was able to recognize my battle. Why? Because every day I would stand before God and say, God, I know who I am. I'm your son. I am the apple of your eye. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am the head and not the tail. I am above and not beneath. I am blessed going in, and I am blessed coming out. Every single day I will pray this over my life. Because God didn't die for me, not for me to know who I was. But he died for me to live even closer to him. Misjudgment would always try to take the place. Don't let something beautiful, if something beautiful comes up, take a step back and say, I'll get back to you. Put it on the shelf and say, God, I recognize that looks great, that looks you, but I need you to actually show me if that is you. And I promise you, God will show you, and he would use somebody, he would open up your eyes, he would give you exactly what you need to recognize that isn't good. Number 4 is this one, and it's unfairness will want to rob equity, the quality of being fair. Unfairness will always try to rob fairness. When you sit there and say, God, this isn't fair. God, why do I have to go through this? God, why is it me? I don't know how many times when I was going through my situation with my father where I sat there and said, God, why me? This is unfair. Why did I have to be the one that carried this burden? Why did I have to be the one that's hurting? Why do I have to be the one that has to fight all these thoughts? And all I sat there was an unfairness. And God looked at me and said, son, don't you know that I'm setting you up to make a change? Don't you know that I'm here to make a difference? Don't you understand that I know it seems unfair right now, but I promise you that it's fair. I promise you that what is about to take place is going to be great. I promise you that you're above all. I promise you. But in my feelings, I thought, no, this is unfair. And isn't it interesting? I had this thought today. It's kind of it's interesting that we look at God and say, God, it's unfair for you not giving me something. But God, every single day, gave his life for you to walk away from him. And he says, hey, I need you to pray for that person. I don't want to pray to that person. I think that's unfair. Or every single day, he says, hey, I need you to go speak to that person, encourage that person, and just let them know, hey, you're loved. And you say, no, God, I don't want to do that. But then you sit in your feelings and say, well, God, but you never gave me anything. Unfair. God's saying, well, I laid my life down for you so that you can be above all. How you look at your fairness is depending on how much you're looking at yourself. If you say, well, God, I need to get through life like this, then you're always going to look through the fair of a victim. But if you look at it that what God has already done for you, you would always understand that every day you get to walk in that fairness. that you don't even deserve the grace, but God is still giving it to you. That every day you can mess up, but he still has a spot for you in heaven. That's fairness. I have one thought for tonight. And the thought is this. Build the awareness. Look at your neighbor and say, build the awareness. Build the awareness. When you can build the awareness inside of you to understand what your battle is, I promise you that you would be above all. Listen. Please listen. If you can build the awareness of what your battle is, I know that I have a problem with my thoughts. Great. Now, every single morning, I'm going to speak against my thoughts. I know I got a problem with hatred in my heart. Every single day, you're going to start speaking love into your heart. I know I got a problem with snapping off and just being just absolutely mean when God says, I've given you the power in the life of death, and I have given you the power in your tongues of life and death. And you know that God is calling you to speak love, and he's calling you to speak life, but you have this issue of speaking death. If that's your problem, be aware. Be aware. Because if you have an inability to recognize your battle, you would always fall. Everyone who goes to battle is aware of their fight. Always. Look at wars. Look at sports teams. When a basketball team is getting ready to jump in and play another team that's big, if the Cavs are going to go against the Warriors, there's an understanding of what that opposition is. There's an awareness of what that battle is. They understand that someone's going to shoot the lights out. They understand that someone's going to come down the court and just make them all collapse and pitch it out. There's an understanding. And this is why certain teams are able to be greater than of it all. But what we fail to recognize is that we as a generation are a team of ourselves. That what we believe in is not just by accident. What we believe in is absolute truth. And what we find ourselves in, and the people that you sit next to, is a team. But what we fail as a team often is that we don't recognize the battle, we don't recognize the opposition, we don't keep our grass low to see the snakes. I tell the people I journey with all the time, keep your grasses low. So that when the snake appears right in front of you, you've been aware of it the whole entire time. Recognize the battle. Recognize what's coming against you. Every single morning, I know that hell's going to shake. I know that the enemy's going to try and come and mess with my mind. I know that enemy's going to try to just mess with me and steer me off track. Every single day, it's a fight for myself. Every single day, I got to sit there and say, God, no, I recognize the battle, and I'm going to continue to push. I'm going to continue to climb. I'm going to continue to keep moving because I recognize how tough it's going to be. I recognize that every single day I see death right in my face. Every single day. And I have to be reminded that my God is a healer. You want truth? It's truth. And every single day I have to remind myself, no, that's my battle, but I can get through it. I read this article today. It was about teen suicide. From 2008 to 2014, and just in the Palm Springs area, there's been 900 suicides. 900. 900. We had a 13-year-old boy just commit suicide 2 weeks ago. 13 years old. When you can't recognize the battle, you would quit. When you can't recognize the battle, you would always give in. But I'm here to tell you today that there is a God that has broken that. There's a God that has changed that. There's a God that has shifted that so that you don't sit there and look at your battles and say, this is it. I give in the towel. I toss in the towel. God never said, toss in the towel. God said, keep pushing forward because I died for you. 900 kids. You ask me if I'm upset? Absolutely. Why do 900 kids die? Why do 900 kids have the thought of committing suicide? It's because there's a lack of awareness inside them. Saying my problems are too big. I can't get through it. I never kept my grass low. I just got bit by the snake. And God is saying, no. I died for you to be aware. I died for you to be aware. I'm going to end right here, and it says 1 Kings 3:9. It says, give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people? This is Solomon, and Solomon is literally having a conversation with God, and he says, God, please give me the understanding so that I can understand what is good and what I can understand what is evil. And I think where we start to fail is that we don't wake up and say, God, show me the good. God, show me the evil so that I may walk right. And God is saying, God is just looking for us as a generation to wake up and say, please, give me the understanding of what's happening. Give me the understanding of what's taking place. When I understood why I had to grow up fatherless is when I started to understand why I should fight my battle. And I think there's so many times a lot of us don't understand why. But I truly believe God is wanting to give some understanding. Ends like this. Verse 3:11, I love this. Solomon literally said, God, please give me the understanding. Give me it. Show me the good. Show me the evil so that I may lead these people correctly. And he says it like this. And verse 11, it says, and God said to him, because you have asked this, and not have asked for yourself for a long time or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself the understanding to discern what is right. He says, because you have asked this, to give me the understanding, here it is. Because you never asked for all the riches, for all the shoes, for all the Yeezys, all the clothes, all the money, because you understand what actually matters, here it is. And there's so many people that are so caught up in all the riches. Let me be so rich that I can make a difference. Let me be so rich that I can just hold on to this. And God's saying, don't you know that I've given you the richness of it all? Don't you know that I have everything that you need? Can you just please open your heart so that I can give you the understanding? I don't know about you, but 900 kids in 6 years? 900. It was 224 in just 3 years. That's beside me. This frustration is a righteous anger. It's saying, God, I'm not allowing this to take place. If I got to have a big old arrow on my back to fight for a generation, I'm willing to do it. But I understand I can't do it alone. And I understand that I need a God that is bigger, and I need a team that is greater. And I need a team to do this. And as we close right here, say, Gio, I want to build that awareness. Dear young person, please, 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 recognize your battles. I promise you, if I could grow up fatherless, I can grow up moving around, I can grow up literally just the way that I did and break every statistic, you can too, I promise you. It's not as hard as what it seems. It just takes someone who is willing. And if you say, Jill, I'm willing to recognize my battle and build the awareness, I want you to just stand where you are. Don't be worried about the person on your left or your right. If you can't stand in a room full of Christians, you won't be able to stand in a room of haters. I promise you. Come on, where you're at, just stretch your hands right now. God has been moving. He's been moving. Come on, in your willingness right now, just say, God, I want to be aware. Come on, just keep your hands raised. Just stay focused on Him. Yes, God.